Oh, shalom, shalom, everyone. This is John Craig, and it's good to be back with you on this Tuesday evening. This is when we're airing this live. It'll be done later on in the week as well. But hey, I'm glad to be with you and to be able to continue with our study that we've been going through the last few weeks. And my goodness, as I was studying it out again and going through some things about some of the amazing things that are within 4 Ezra 4, or 2 Estras. It is really, really amazing. So I just wanted to say we've got some things to talk about tonight that I hope you're looking forward to as much as I am, being able just to kind of talk a little bit about it. So nevertheless, hey, I just wanted to let you know, who am I? And Sandi and I are pastors at Life of Worship here in Amarillo, Texas. And Sandi is, again, getting work done. She is continually getting some stuff done, getting our canning done from our garden and all the different things that go along with that. So I get to be here alone with you again today. And I'm happy to do so. So I just want to let you know, who are we? Of course, we said who we are, and our congregation is located in Amarillo, Texas. Yeah, I'm sitting here in front of our stage in our congregation instead of in my office, and so I got a little bit better background, and that is not a green screen. So, no, that is our stage, and this is where we meet. We have tour portion back over there, and that is where we have tables set up where we study out the Torah portion on Shabbat, and that's at noon Central. And you can join us here on the Life of Worship channel. Then also at 3, we have our encounter service, which is totally different. Sometimes we continue to hit highlights from the Torah portion. Sometimes we talk about a whole bunch of other subjects. And if you haven't tuned in for the message that we've had in the last, I think it's the last 2 weeks, you want to go back and review those, because we're actually going in a more conversational manner over some of the things that Eddie had talked about when he was here, because these things are really quite life-changing, but we're resetting and reminding people of that foundation that he laid, talking about the restoration of the rod of Aaron that was in the Ark of the Covenant. And it's one of the elements that has not come to its full fruition here within our Hebrew Roots community, let alone among those who are a part of the greater body of Messiah. So go back and check those out if you haven't done so on the Life of Worship channel. It's called Life of Worship Ministries is what it is, Life of Worship Ministries. So our website, you see that scrolling across the bottom of the page, is they're at www.lifeofworshipamarillo.org, and you can find out some more things about us and the different events and conferences and feast days, what's happening on those days and where we're meeting and all that. All of those calendar events are listed there, and they'll be updated soon. And also on our website, if you want to hear what Eddie Chumney said when he was here, I recommend that you go and listen to him, because he is one of the best that takes scripture to define what scripture says about certain things. And he laid it all out. What is the priesthood, the Zadokite priesthood? What is it that they believed? Well, how did it influence the first century believers? And much of the writings that we see in what we call our New Testament today, or Brit Hadashah today, many of those are echoing the writings during the, quote, 400 silent years between Malachi and Matthew. And out of those is a whole bunch of information. If you understand who those people were during the so-called silent years, you'll understand who we are as believers following Yeshua the Messiah and understanding the Hebraic roots of our faith. And so that's just a little plug of some of the things we've been talking about. We're going to continue that study on Shabbat, and that'll be with Pastor Sandi and I. And I really, really hope you can join us. Also, if you like what you're hearing here at Life of Worship and the ministry that we have and the words that we're speaking and you're connecting with that vision, we would love for you to come partner with us. Even though you may live hundreds of miles away, but you're saying, you know what, this is a great community to be part of. This is a great fellowship to be part of. And you want a partnership with us? Absolutely. In prayer, you can partner with us that way. We find ourselves under all sorts of different types of attacks, and your prayers are coveted. We really appreciate your prayers because they avail much. We need financial support at this ministry. We have a facility here by which we can come and we can gather, and we have a place that's set aside. We don't have to meet in a hotel. We don't have to meet at a special meeting room. We don't have to haul our musical equipment in and out every Shabbat. We have a place that we can come and we can gather and we can call our own, and we can broadcast and streamcast these meetings here as well, and so that we can reach out a lot further than what this little location in Amarillo, Texas can do. So but it takes money to do that. It takes finances to keep the lights on and be able to keep that internet bill paid, to take care of all the details that go around it. Consider prayerfully giving and being part of the ministry that way through your regular tithes. If you don't have a place to give your tithes, or you don't have a place to bring your offering, or you're looking for a place that is good soil to plant good seed, then Life of Worship is a good place for you. And so go to lifeofworshipamarillo.org, and on there you'll find the donate tab, and click on that, and it'll take you to the site by which you can make a donation. We would certainly appreciate it. And this time of year is very, very much needed. Last spring, we made an appeal, and many of you heard our cry and what we were needing, and you came through. And what happened as a result of that fundraiser is it's carried us through for several months. Now the budget's got kind of thin again, and we're late on our lease, and we need to gather up some funds to be able to do that, as well as some other obligations that require our taking care of, as well as even we even to buy ink right now for our printers. So we would certainly appreciate. And it's very hard for me to ask anybody to help us out, but when the time comes and you need it, what do? You got to turn to your family to help out. So Eddie and Tammy, it's good to see you there. Don't covet prayers. Tells us not to covet. Well, you know what I mean. I'm saying we really appreciate your prayers. I don't want to mix or mince words, but that's what I meant by that. Okay. What is it when we're young and we're fresh out of school and we want to make a way in life, and it's like, well, this is what we see life representing. People have a home, and they have cars, and they have appliances, and they have this and furnishing and all that sort of stuff. It's like, wow, it costs money to do all that. And it's like, wow, how did they do it? And there is that in this culture that we live in. But the older I get, it's like, you know what? The more I want is more of the word. And that's one of the reasons why we're going over this study in Ezra, because it is literally a foundation of the things that we see in the Brit Hadashah. It is a foundation of the very faith that we have, and the very things that, in fact, that Ezra is saying are the same type of things that you may have heard from pulpits across America. When people used to preach from the pulpits, instead of giving some type of psychological, attaboy, be encouraged type of message. Not that anything is necessarily wrong with that, but if you depart too much from Scripture and you just use from what the latest psychologists are saying, and it sounds like I won't go there. It's just important that we get back to the Word, and it's also important that we see from this perspective how forward-thinking Ezra was, and really let these things begin to echo within us. And I love the wisdom that comes out of it. So go back and check out Walking in Spirit and Truth for the last few weeks. If you haven't been with us, you'll see Ezra. In fact, I was reading some commentary a few days ago regarding Ezra and what they were saying about who he was and where he had come from. And there was even some controversy, there's always controversy. If you've been in this community long enough, there's always controversy. But they were saying, well, maybe Ezra was maybe not necessarily written by Ezra himself, but maybe it was written maybe 200 years before Messiah in the Qumran community or among the Essenes, and okay, you can make that point, but when you read it, there's actually some prophetic words that his time was at the time at the end of the Babylonian exile, and he is a priest in the lineage of Zadok, who was the high priest under King David, who is of the lineage of Phineas, who is of the lineage of Eleazar, who is the lineage of Aaron. So there's this long train of priests that held to a particular standard. They didn't allow those things to be bent and to be misconstrued, or they didn't have an oral tradition. That wasn't the way of the Zadokite priesthood. They held to that which Aaron spoke. They held to those things that Moses brought down from the mountain, and they carried forth and they preserved those things. And so not saying that anything that might have come from the oral traditions, just say that there are commentaries. Basically, they have commentary and perspective. I would say that one of the things that come out of the oral traditions is what it's preserved for us today in 21st century Western civilization, and that is preserving for us the culture of around the Torah, even though they did change things like the days and the times and the seasons. They did bring stuff back from Babylon that brought corruption into the priesthood when the priesthood ended up being bought and sold, and it became a place like that. So I just wanted to make sure that we have a pretty clear understanding of where we're coming from here. Ezra, being a priest, has preserved a lot for us. Okay, now I'm going to have to fix my AC adapter because my battery is going to not hold up for the whole time for some reason. There's no power. Scotty, I need more power. Okay, all right, so there we go. Anyway, are you excited? Tell me, are you excited to hear some of these things? Like, John, stop talking. Let's get in the study. Okay. All right, we're going to get into the study. All right. And so I got these glasses because I had to replace my other readers. And so, but these are even bigger. So it's, there's a certain time you can't see through them if you're too far away. You know how it is if your eyes need to have a little additional help to read. And so, then I'm peering over the top of my glasses like my dad. And Sandy said the other day, she goes, "You look just like your dad when you do that and you're looking over the top of your glasses." Well, okay, right there you go. Well, we're the same household, same blood. So I guess there's very similarities. Don't we all have characteristics of our parents? I'm just saying. All right. Hey, so if I'm reading out of 4 Ezra, which is in the Sefer. I've got a Sefer Bible here. It's not the Millennial Edition. It's the edition right before the Millennium Edition. And but last week we were touching on different things. I kind of left a little convoluted at the end, and I want to bring some clarity to some of the things I talked about there at the end, because there was a parable that the angel of Yah that was speaking to Ezra about. And remember, Ezra has just come off another 7-day fast. So he was all day, all week long. I mean, he's been pondering these things, and it just, again, it begins to erupt out of him. And as all these contemplations and the mourning and the grieving over what he's seeing, as this is overflowing in him, then he has this encounter again with this angel, and the angel's name is Uriel, and that we find that back in Ezra chapter 4, verse 1, Uriel. So he's one of the messengers that came from the throne room of Yah, and he's having this conversation with him. I think it's pretty cool. One of the things that you can see about these angelic messengers is that of the wisdom that they have. They only come to bring the message that Yah tells them to bring. They're not going to bring anything else above and beyond that which is already laid out within those certain parameters that Yah gave them. And so you're going to see me looking down a lot because that's the only place I have to put my Bible. But so he has this, and he's making this. He's laid out his complaints again, and he's talking about Adam, and Um, and oh, hey Terry, it's good to see you checking in there. So he keeps going back to the days of creation, and he talks about Adam and Adam's fall, and it's like, Adam, why did you do such a thing? Because look at what's happened to the earth, and look what's happened to this, to the descendants of Jacob. And if Adam, if you wouldn't have messed up, we wouldn't be living in these circumstances that we have. And it is so amazing that not only Uriel, but also Yahweh himself is speaking to Ezra to just download wisdom. And I'm telling you, some of this wisdom that he's talking about is absolutely, it's like, in one way it's really refreshing, because these type of questions that Ezra is mulling over and he's bemoaning and he's grieving over are actually the same types of things that you and I have felt and believed, or have dealt with. And we get asked those questions like, why does God have evil in the earth? Why is there evil in the earth? And so in this chapter 7, he actually lays out he begins to lay out the truths about that. And I love the wisdom that comes from it. And so first off, let's go over this parable. And I'm going to just go ahead and read it. And it says, and in verse 3, and I said, speak on, my Elohim. Then said he unto me, the sea is set in a wide place, that it might be deep and great. But put the case, the entrance were narrow and like a river. So like the entrance to this big broad sea that's deep and everything, it has this narrow river coming into it. But who then could go into the sea to look upon it and to rule it, if he were not through the narrow? How could he come into the broad? In other words, how can you get down there unless you go through this narrow? You can even put it a creek or a stream that empties out into this broad ocean. And the only entrance and the only way to get there is down this stream and down this narrow place. And he says, there is also another thing. A city is built and set upon a broad field, and is full of good things. The entrance thereof is narrow, and is set in a dangerous place to fall. Like as if there is a fire on the right hand, and on the left a deep water, and there is but one path between them, even between the fire and the water, so small that there could but one man go there at once. So think about this. Think about a city that's built, a city that it just is full of good things, and it has this broad field around it. But the only way to get there is on a path, and it's full of danger. One side is fire, the other side is water. And you can't even go side by side. It's so narrow that you have to go along this treacherous path, almost to the point of you're having to balance and be very, very careful. Make sure every foot is sure. And in verse 9, it says, if this city were now given unto a man for an inheritance, if he never shall pass the danger set before it, how shall he receive this inheritance? That's you and me. We're on this path. And unless we go down this path, how could we ever receive the inheritance of this big city that's full of good things? In verse 10, it says, and I said, it is so, Adonai. Then said he unto me, even so also is Israel's portion. Because for their sakes I made the world, and when Adam transgressed my statutes, then was decreed that now is done. So think about that. So Adam had it made in the garden. He had every good thing that you could think of. I mean, so much is that why would you have to consider of anything else? Because everything's before you. You can't imagine anything with and living without it because it's already there. But because of Adam, so it was decreed and it's now done, and that there is still a city, and it's and and surrounding it is this broad field, and it's full of good things, but that there would be a narrow path to get there. Wow. So then were the entrances of then were the entrances of this world made narrow, full of sorrow and travail. They are but few and evil, full of perils and very painful. Now, doesn't that sound like life? For the entrance of the elder world were wide and sure, and brought immortal fruit. Think about that. The tree of life was in the middle of the garden. And I believe that in the middle of the garden are the same trees that we see over in Revelation 21 that talk about the trees planted by the living water, and their leaves are the healing of the nations. And going on, it says, if then they that live labor not to enter these straight and vain things, they can never receive those that are laid up for them. Isn't that where we are? Isn't that where you and I are? That unless we go through the straight and the narrow, then we'll never be able to receive those things. And this is the sobering thing about this message. And I think about this download that Ezra's getting after 7 days of fasting, that it is this voice of this angel that resonates inside of Ezra right now. It's resonating. Think about those times in the quiet place, in the secret place of the Most High, spending time in worship and reading his word and in prayer, intense times. And then think about how our perspective on eternity changes and the temporal changes, right? Now, therefore, this is verse 15, why disquiet yourself, seeing you are but corruptible man? You're a corruptible man. I mean, think about that. So, in other words, our body is corruptible. It's not incorruptible yet. It is corruptible. And why are you moved, whereas you are but mortal? Why have you not considered in your mind this thing that is to come, rather than that which is present? In other words, why so much dwelling? Why haven't you dwelt on these things to kind of help give you focus in your life, so that your path on this narrow path is sure, that you become more sure-footed, right? And then it goes on, it says, then answered I and said, oh, Yahweh Adonai, you have ordained in your Torah. Where did he ordain it? In the Torah. That the righteous should inherit these things, but the wicked should perish. So he has, all of a sudden, he has this wow moment. I mean, that's exactly what's happening. He has this wow moment. All of a sudden, he's enlightened. And then I answered and said, O Yahweh Adonai, you have ordained your Torah that the righteous should inherit these things, but the wicked should perish. Nevertheless, the righteous shall suffer straight things and hope for wide. For they that have done wickedly have suffered the straight things, and yet shall not see the wide. I mean, think about this. Think about how everyday people in everyday life are just, many of them are prospering. And in considering the day and the hour that we're living in, many people still have very good salaries. And the very fact that they have very good salaries and they don't feel the pinch of, the rising interest rates, rising cost of goods and services and food and all of these, utilities and all these different things. They're in a broad place. And when you're in a broad place, you don't think about this narrow path that we've been ordained to walk. And this also is required, by the way. This is required whether you have much or whether you have little. You're required to walk this narrow way if you are to inherit the city that has been made for us. And he said unto me, there is no judge above Elohim, and none that has understanding above El Elyon. So in other words, there's wisdom of why the path had to be made like it was, and why and as it is. And it says, for now think about this, for there be many that perish in this life because they despise the Torah of Elohim that is set before them. In other words, Torah is the test. Torah is the test. And I hope you and I are passing the test by following after Yah, following after his ways of righteousness, of this halakha, this walk, to not only understand the walk and the physical aspects of this within the material world, but also to see the inspiration that comes as a result of walking it out. And so Torah is the test. So I'm going to read that again. But for these be many that perish in this life, because they despise the Torah of Elohim that is set before them. I think about all these different people that call themselves Christians, people that go to church, they attend church, they're faithful, and yet they despise the Torah of Elohim. And I'm thinking, man, this is really sobering. This Torah of Elohim that is set before them. So Torah is the test. For Elohim has given straight commandment to such as came, what they should do to live, even as they came, and what they should observe to avoid punishment. Nevertheless, they were not, one, they were not obedient to him. Two, but spoke against him. Because if you speak against his word, you're speaking against Yahweh himself. And remember, Yeshua is the word that became flesh. So to speak against his word that he gave us is to speak against Yeshua, who is the word. It's pretty sobering. But nevertheless, they were not obedient unto him. Two, but spoke against him. And imagined vain things. In other words, they followed Yeshua in their own image, because they didn't want to heed the things that were written. That was relegated to the Jews. That was relegated for a time in the past. But here we're after the time of Yeshua, and all that went away. Imagine the power of that deception in the lives. And no wonder it says that even that Paul warns that even it was Yeshua that warned that even the elect, should the elect even be deceived? Think about that. I mean, it's very crucial. Going on, it says, and deceived themselves by wicked deeds. They deceived themselves by wicked deeds. Well, wicked deeds has quite a parameter. I mean, you can say, murdering somebody in some of these videos that I've seen where we see a particular, because of, they're saying, boy, I don't know if I should say it. Should I say it? I saw some videos today. They took my breath away, because we're seeing people of one color skin that are being just beat up, knocked out, unconscious, simply because of the color of their skin, by a group of people that have a different color of their skin. Now, 40 years ago, we probably would have said it, or 40, 50 years ago, we would have said, oh, I think I know what you're talking about. But this is different. And I was looking at that because I was like, that could be my grandmother. That could be my mom. Because seeing them attack just women in their 80s and laughing and kicking and punching them, and they're knocked out from the first punch. I mean, I'm sorry. Okay. But there's a spectrum of it. But some people that just simply live a life, but they will not keep Torah, that's considered a wicked deed, honestly, right? So you say, well, they have a form of godliness, but they deny the very power of that godliness, which is the living Torah. Not saying they're denying Yeshua, but he gave us his word. All right, you and I are on the same page. Okay, so going on. And 5, and said of Elyon that he is not. That he is not. I reheard an interview of George S. I'm going to just say George S., who is from Hungary, and was asked the question, "Do you believe in God?" He said, "No." I mean, just like that. And so, and said of El Elyon that he is not, and knew not, number 6, knew not his ways, but his Torah they have despised and denied his covenants. Think about that. They denied his covenants. How many people have we talked to and ministered in the past that the only covenant that they hold to is the covenant that came out of the cross, and the death, burial, and resurrection of Yeshua the Messiah, forgetting about the Abrahamic covenant, forgetting about the covenant with Moses, forgetting about the covenant of Noah with Noah, and even the Adamic covenant, forgetting about all these covenants. They denied his covenants. In his statutes have they not been faithful, and have not performed his works. And therefore Ezra, for the empty are empty things, and for the full are full things. Behold, the time shall come that these signs, these tokens, these signs which I have told you shall come to pass, and the bride shall appear. And she is coming forth, shall be seen, and she coming forth shall be seen, that now is withdrawn from the earth. And whosoever is delivered from the foresaid evils shall see my wonders. Now, isn't that perfect? So you have all these different things, and then it boils down that here's this bride, and it says that now is withdrawn from the earth. And you think, well, what are we talking about? This bride that's withdrawn from the earth? In other words, this bride that's hidden, and and whosoever is delivered from the foresaid evils shall see my wonders. In other words, who gets to see it? The ones who passed the Torah test. Those who passed the Torah test. For my son Yahusha shall be, or shall we say, so my son Joshua is really the transliteration, or shall we say Yeshua? We can say, if you want to say it that way, my son Yeshua shall be revealed with those that be with him, and they that remain shall rejoice within 400 years. Now I want to say, did here in 4 Ezra, did we not get the name of Yahusha or Yahusha? Yahusha is how Dr. P says it in a particular way. Or you say Yeshua, shall be revealed with those that be with him, and they that remain shall rejoice within 400 years. And this is why it says 400 years. Well, if you think about the time of Ezra and the writing that he did in documentation as a scribe and as a priest, and when was he doing that? It was at the time, at the end of the Babylonian exile, 400 years before the coming of Messiah. And we have this prophetic word that was given to him. It says, after these years shall my son Mashiach die. Yeah. So they were given this timing. Now, if you want to go back and you look at the writings of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and you can see the apocryphal writings, in other words, the opening and the revealing. Apocrypha means the opening, the revealing. I did look that up. And so if you look at the apocryphal writings, they were looking for what? The Messiah. The Messiah was going to come. He was going, and in fact, here Ezra was told that after these years shall my son Mashiach die, and all men that have life, and the world shall be turned into the old silence 7 days, like as in the former judgments, so that no man shall remain. And after 7 days, the world that yet awakens not shall be raised up, and that shall die that is corrupt. In other words, so now we have this element of resurrection. Now, where have we heard about resurrection? Doesn't Paul talk about this resurrection, that the dead in Christ will rise first? And we that are still alive will meet him in the air. So we know, even with that type of thought, so thinking about those apocryphal writings of the Dead Sea Scrolls, that Paul spent that time in the wilderness. Where was it? The wilderness was the area by which the Essenes lived, down where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found in the Qumran community, and in that area. And he was under their tutelage as he learned more about this understanding through the lineage of the Zadok priesthood, through the teacher of righteousness, is what they call the main leader of the group. And so now he's saying, and then he's talking about these 7 days. And so he's got to wait for the end of the 7 days. Well, what is the end of the 7 days? And or waiting for the 7th day, and after 7 days the world that yet awakens not shall be raised up, and that shall die that is corrupt. Because when is it that those that are corrupt face judgment? It's think about that. It's at the end of the 7th day of the great white throne judgment. And the earth shall restore those that are asleep in her, and so shall the dust those that dwell in silence, and the secret places shall deliver those souls that are committed unto them. And El Elyon shall appear upon the seat of judgment, and misery shall pass away, and the long suffering shall have an end, but judgment only shall remain. So in other words, there is a fixed time that is approaching in our future, that time will come, and there'll be no more chances. We're going to go on, but judgment only shall remain. Truth shall stand, and faith shall wax strong. I love that. I like that. I really like that a lot. And the work shall follow, and the reward shall be showed, and the good deeds shall be a force, and wicked deeds shall bear no rule. So you're sick and tired of the powers that be, the globalists, Luciferians, those that have given themselves over to Hasatan, that are in places of power, and they'll bear no rule. They'll face the judgment, and they will have no place in the world to come. Then said I, Abraham prayed. And so he goes on, he talks about how Abraham prayed, how and interceded. Basically, how Abraham interceded for Sodom, Moses interceded for our fathers in the wilderness, how Joshua after him for Israel in the time of Achan. Remember what happened with Achan? Samuel and David for the destruction, and Solomon for them that would come into the sanctuary. They interceded. They laid the groundwork through prayer. And Elijah, for those that received rain, and for the dead, and that the dead might live, and for Ezekiel, for the people in the time of Babylon, and many. So talking about all these different people that prayed, and so he's like, remember these people. They laid down, they prayed. Those prayers don't ever stop. Just think about that. Those intercessions that those men of Yah prayed are still powerful and effective for us today. They still ring in the ears of Yah. It's kind of an interesting thought, because he's reminding them, think about this. Even so now, seeing corruption has grown up and wickedness increased, and the righteous have prayed for the wicked, wherefore, why shall it not be so now also? In other words, well then, if we pray for the wicked now, why don't we see results and change like what happened when they prayed? And he answered me and said, this present life is not the end, but and this present life is not the end, and where much glory abides. Therefore have they prayed for the weak, but their day of doom shall be the end of time, and the beginning of immortality for to come. Wherein corruption is past, intemperance is at it an end, infidelity is cut off, righteousness is grown, and truth is sprung up. Then shall no man be able to save him that is destroyed, nor to oppress him that has gotten the victory. In other words, you know what? There's no more time. There'll be time. There's no that life, the deeds of life will be laid before, and those that were corrupt and didn't repent, it's done. And nor that those that were in authority over us will no longer be able to oppress those of us who have the victory. Then this is just really tremendous. But Ezra goes on, and he actually adds this as well. And he says in verse 48, and this is where he begins to bemoan the fact of what happened with Adam. And he says, "O Adam, what have you done? For though it was you that sinned, you are not fallen alone, but we all that come of you. For what profit is it unto us if there be promised us an immortal time, whereas we have done the works that bring death? And what there is promised us an everlasting hope, whereas ourselves, being most wicked, are made vain." So he's just like thinking, Adam, what did you do? What did you do? Because here we find ourselves, and we're having to, we find ourselves not only trying to walk out the Torah, trying to pass this Torah test, so to speak, but we're empowered. Just remember, we're empowered by the Holy Spirit of the living God. Okay, right? Just want to throw that in. Okay, so I mean, don't be depressed about this. It's just that he's contemplating these things, and he says, and that there are laid up for us dwellings of health and safety, whereas we have lived wickedly, and that the glory of El Elyon is kept to defend them which have led a weary life, whereas we've walked in the most wicked ways of all. I mean, it's like the groundwork was laid there by Adam, and then we just have this, it's like a rut. We can't get out of the rut that was laid before us, and it seems kind of defeating. And that there should be showed a paradise whose fruit endures forever, wherein security and medicine, since we shall not enter into it. In other words, Adam, you had everything there, and we don't even know what that looks like. And yet we only have this idea, and we don't, and how are we going to walk into that? How are we going to experience that? So, and he says in verse 54, "For we have walked in unpleasant places." Isn't that what that narrow path is about? "And that the faces of them which use abstinence shall shine above the stars, whereas our faces shall be blacker than darkness. For while we lived and committed iniquity, we considered not that we should begin to suffer for it after death. Then answered he me, and he said, this is the condition of the battle." Okay. And this is like, in other words, he's going back to bemoaning the fact that life is hard. And why is it hard is because there's all this wickedness that we have to work through. And wickedness, anything that becomes a very difficult thing, and it's a difficult life, a difficult test, we're challenged on every front. And so I did tell you, those that, there are those that will get the victory. I read that earlier, right? Remember? That was back in verse 45, chapter 7. Then, and it goes on and he says, "This is the condition of the battle, which man that is born upon the earth shall fight, that if he be overcome, he shall suffer as you have said. But if he get the victory, he shall receive the thing that I say. For this is the life whereof Moses spoke unto the people while he lived, saying, choose life that you may live. Nevertheless, they believed not him, nor yet the prophets after him, no, nor me, which have spoken unto them, that there should not be such heaviness in their destruction as shall be joy over them that are persuaded to Yeshua, or to salvation. And so think about that, that there should not be such heaviness in their destruction as shall be joy over them that are persuaded to Yeshua. So in other words, I think Ezra is crying out and saying, we have all this destruction that's going on around us right now, but he's being reminded here that the heaviness and the weight of I mean, think about our loved ones, that we want them to come to know the truth. We want them to come into the truth. And we feel the heaviness when they refuse to come in. They refuse to walk in the way. And he says a time will come that the joy will overcome those feelings. It says, though the joy will over and shall be joy over them that are persuaded to Yeshua, that are persuaded to salvation. I answered then and said, I know, Adonai, that El Elyon is called. Now he's going to go down this list. This is where another perspective comes in. And I think this is very sobering. We need to have this eternal perspective every single day. And yeah, you're right. You're right, Eddie and Tammy. It's a hard thing to experience. Absolutely. So he's giving us perspective now, taking us back to think about the Most High. He says, I know, Adonai, that El Elyon is called merciful, in that he has mercy upon them which are not yet come into the world, and upon those also that turn to his Torah, and that he is patient and long-suffering, and long suffers those that have sinned as his creatures. You should have some hope here, right? Should let that heaviness begin to lift off as we think about the mercy of God, about those he has mercy for, that those that have not even yet come into the world, that those who turn to his Torah, that he is patient, that he long suffers those that have sinned. And verse 65, and that he is bountiful, for he is ready to give where it needs, and that he is of great mercy, for he multiplies more and more mercies to them that are present and that are past, and also to them which are to come. Now, isn't that also pretty wild to think that he's multiplying mercies more and more to those that are present, that's you and me, to those that are past. Mercies are why? Because he's the God of the living, not of the dead. And to them that are present, them that are past, and also them that are to come. For if he shall not multiply his mercies, the world would not continue with them that inherit therein. So think about this. If he didn't give us his mercy every single day and multiply those mercies, everything would fall apart. There would be no more future. It would be done and over with. But he's also pointing out the fact that by saying that is that there will be a time that the mercy is only for his people when judgment comes, because there will be no more chances. Verse 68, and he pardons, for if he did not so of his goodness, that they which have committed iniquities might be eased of them, then 10,000th part of man should not remain living. And being judge, if he should not forgive them that are cured with his word, and put out the multitude of contentions, there should be very few left, perhaps in an innumerable multitude. In other words, then who can be saved? If he didn't pardon, if he didn't show such mercy, then 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 nobody, very few could make it. And I just think about that. He is our judge, James 4:12, where it says that he is both judge and lawgiver. He is the one who gives the Torah, and so he pardons our iniquity, and he grants us forgiveness, and that's because we choose to look upon Yeshua, and we seek to pass the Torah test. It's very, very important. I think people really have a hard time thinking that we are, we're not saved by our works. We're saved by the grace that comes through Yeshua. The point is that we've been saved for good works. We've been pulled out. In other words, we've been pulled out of this destruction that Ezra is talking about, so that we can live out these good works. And what are the good works? It is the pathway of righteousness, this narrow way. We can't walk the narrow way. That is the good works, and what do? Then we take on the characteristics of El Elyon that we just talked about, who is patient, that is bountiful, who long suffers. He's full of great mercy. He pardons iniquity, and he is full of forgiveness. And we carry those attitudes and those examples with us wherever we go. And he answered me, saying, El Elyon has made this world for many, but the world to come for few. Now that is powerful right there. I'm going to say it again because we're getting close to our time. El Elyon has made this world for many, but the world to come for few. I will tell you a similitude, Ezra. So I'm going to give you an example, Ezra. As when you ask the earth, it shall say unto you that it gives much mold or clay, whereof earthen vessels are made, but little dust that gold comes of. Even so is the course of this present world. There may be many created, but few shall be saved. So, in other words, there's lots of clay in the world, but very little gold. What are we? We're to be those that gold and silver and precious stones. And we're not supposed to be and see ourselves like the clay of this world. But many are there be many created, but few shall be saved. So answered I and said, swallow then down. In other words, I want you to chew on this and swallow it, O my soul. Understanding. Swallow down, my soul, understanding, and devour wisdom. For you have agreed to give ear and are willing to prophesy. For you have no longer space than only to live. O Yahweh, if you suffer not your servant, that we may pray before you, and give us seed unto our heart and culture to our understanding, that there may come fruit of it, how shall man live in that is corrupt, who bears the place of man? For you are alone, and we are one workmanship of your hands, like as you have said. For when the body, and he goes on, and I'm going to have to just kind of wrap it up here, because there's so much more in chapter 8 that we need to go on and talk about this. But isn't that sobering? Therefore, what are we going to conclude here? Is that it's because of God's great mercy, El Elyon's mercy, Yahweh's mercy, that he gives us seed into our heart, plants that seed, and then he nourishes it, he cultures it, so that it comes and it bears forth much fruit. And if it wasn't for his handiwork and without his touch in our lives, we would not be able to overcome. And I want to conclude it there with what he's talking about, because Torah is the test, and that he prophesied then that Yeshua would come, that point in time would be at the end of the seven days. There'd be no more chances. But in this, he pours out his mercy. He's patient. He's bountiful. He's pardoning our iniquities. He gives forgiveness. And he wants us to recognize that in spite of how broad this world is, we're going to go down this narrow path to a broad field where the city is, that is full of the abundance. The same thing that Adam had to leave, we're going to be brought back around to. And he's going to nurture that fruit that is within us so that we can produce those good works in order that we can all come together in that destination. But we have to go one by one. We can't just drag somebody with us. The way is too treacherous. So, all right. I hope you got something out of that today. I love these things, because a lot of stuff that I read today, I just think about all the things that we've had in the past, that all the things of the layers upon layers and layers that Yahweh's brought us through, even in the church world, even before we came into Torah, that it was all part of where we are now, because honestly, everything is part of the Torah test. Everybody comes to the door of the Torah a different way, but that door of the Torah is Yeshua. And then we enter in and we live that out, and we begin to experience his mercies and his victories and become fruitful. So yeah, that's my 2 cents for you today. I hope it was nourishing, is rich for you. Is it okay? It was for me. That's all I can say. All right, just want to remind everybody, Alive in Messiah is going on every evening, 6 p.m. Central Time. So stay tuned for all the special guests that have been being part of that. Also, come back with us, Life of Worship on Shabbat. And until next time, Shalom.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hugie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.